Walter, we're going to start, kick us off with a bit more detail about the programme itself.
Well, thank you very much, David. Prynawn da pawb, pleser mawr bod yma efo chi. Good afternoon to everyone. Real pleasure to be here with you. I'll be sharing my screen and then Hugh Morris will be starting the presentation. So here we go. Hopefully it works.
Yeah.
Okay. There we are. Thanks very much for the opportunity to come to address you on the Taith. I'm suffering a little bit from COVID, so if my voice does give in, then at least I got Walter who can cover from me. But basically, the Taith program, Walter, if you could go to the next slide, please, was established a year ago. You've had a lot of information about Taith from Susanna this morning. So we will skip through some of these slides, but what I'd like to do is to trigger off a number of questions in your mind as I go through. And that is what's important for us, is that we have the feedback from you so that both Taith and also the sector organizing bodies can respond to your needs. So we know that Taith is an international learning exchange program, which will create life-changing opportunities. Now, what are those life-changing opportunities and for which sets of learners? So it's important that we be able to define the learners and to define appropriate mobility opportunities for those students, for those learners. The Welsh Government has funded it to the value of £65 million, so there's plenty of funding there to support these initiatives. As has been stated earlier, this is an inclusive, if you could go on, Walter, this is an inclusive scheme, including higher education, schools, youth, further education, vocational education, training, and also adult education. And we all want to respond to your own particular needs in each of those sectors. That is why, for instance, in Pathway 1, there are distinct calls for proposals for the various sectors. That is to respond to your individual needs. It will include mobility opportunities from Wales across the world and also from the world back into Wales. It includes learners as well as staff. So as long as you are clear that the opportunities are there clearly for the sector, and we want you to engage with it, but we also want to understand your needs. If you go on to the next slide then, please, Walter. Briefly, the targets are 50 long-term partnerships in 40 countries, and ultimately by the end of the project, there'll be 15,000 participants from Wales having benefited from mobility opportunities, and 10,000 incoming learners and staff into Wales. And again, Wales will benefit from their presence and cooperation. Thank you, Walter. Sorry, the structure for Taith has been summarized in this slide, which are 3 pathways, and a pathway is virtually the call for proposal for funding. Pathway 1, which is already open, includes mobility for participants, and that is individuals or groups of individuals, whether they are staff or students. So that would typically be a group of learners going to a host institution in France or Germany or wherever, or for staff. The second one is Pathway 2, which is partnership and strategic collaboration. And again, I'd like you to reflect upon the opportunities that this pathway offers to you as a sector. It's meant to be supporting international collaborative projects led by an education or training organization in Wales. And it will be to develop enhancement-led international learning exchange activities and practices. there you could be looking at regional partnerships, setting up a regional partnership. You could be looking at a thematic approach based on a subject or based on a topic. We could be looking at curriculum development. However, I will explain a little bit more about the detail of that, but I'd like you to reflect upon that, particularly with two of the other speakers in this session, in this workshop. And pathway 3 is for capacity building funding in order to build the infrastructure which will support these mobility opportunities for learners and staff. Diolch. The sector organizing body, as has been mentioned earlier, is made up of the Learning and Work Institute and also Adult Learning Wales. They will both aim to offer support, whether that's practical assistance for organization or to promote international mobility, to offer training. But again, the question I'm going to ask you here, please could you reflect upon the nature and the type of assistance which you feel would be beneficial to your organizations. And again, Kay will be able to take note of these and potentially respond to them. Diolch. Transfer. There we are. Over to you, Walter.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to give you a flavour of the opportunities that are available under the Pathway 1 route. And that's something that you can apply right now for it. In terms of the international partners, and we have some in this panel, applications for funding need to come from a Welsh organisation. That may include an international partner, and we will be more than happy to fund those, but applications need to come from Wales. So have a chat with your international partners if you already have some, and see if you sorry, there was a problem with the slide. Okay, so for the first year of funding for the adult education sector, there's £200,000 available. This is only the first year. There'll be 4 more calls for funding. And what we would really like to see is that the sector collectively tells us we need more funding. We have lots of projects, lots of ideas, and we need more from Taith. And that's something, as a conversation that we'll be more than happy to have with the funder, Welsh Government, to increase the amount available for the sector. So pathway 1 is open, and the closing date for applications is the 12th of May at midday. So you need to submit your applications before that deadline, please. There's mobility for learners and staff as well. And there's opportunities to bid for a 12-month or a 24-month project in this first call. Just to give you a very brief overview of what you can apply for, and this information is available in the program guide that you can access in our website. But for learners, for instance, you can apply for group mobilities for a minimum of 3 days up to a month. You can go anywhere in the world, except for countries where there are restrictions. You need to check that with FCDO. Then the second option is for blended group mobilities, where you want to combine a physical mobility to a country with some online learning. And the online learning can take place before or after the actual physical mobility. And then again, that's for a minimum of 3 days and a maximum of 2 weeks and a minimum of 20 hours of virtual engagement. The third option is individual mobilities, where there is a tailored program for learners, and they range from a minimum of 2 weeks up to a whole year. And finally is virtual group exchanges, which have become more popular due to the pandemic. So when physical mobility is not possible, or when you feel that the learner needs the security of a virtual engagement before venturing overseas, this could be an option you may want to pursue. And finally, for staff, we have 2 options. The first one is professional development and includes everything you can think of: attending a course, engaging in partnership work with counterparts in other countries, exchanging best practice, looking for knowledge that may benefit Wales in other countries, and inviting people from other countries to come to Wales to run those types of activities for a minimum of 2 days and a maximum of 1 month. And the final opportunity is preparatory visits, where you want to go overseas to have initial conversations with a partner you're interested in working with, or when you want to go and visit the facilities that your learners will use when they undertake their physical mobility. These range from a minimum of 2 days up to a maximum of 1 week. So there's a bit of everything there for you, and we'll be more than happy to get any feedback from you whether these opportunities work for your sector. I will hand over back to Hugh to talk about Pathway 2 now. Diolch yn fawr, Hugh.
Yes, this is an interesting pathway or funding source. It's there to generate funding to support consortia. If you could go on for me, Walter, please. To support consortia, international members, and these would include at least 2 Welsh organisations along with international partners. The project should be enhancement-led and ideally would lead to increased mobility opportunities. We've had a number of examples of potential projects during our consultation. And in particular, I remember talking to Kay and other people in the sector, interested in maybe developing opportunities with regions abroad, so that we could maximize a small, maybe partnership agreement, but the benefits would roll out throughout the sector. The themes of the project will be open-ended. Again, in terms of the projects, they could be inter-sector, that is solely for the adult sector, or they could be trans-sector or cross-sector, which would involve maybe other sectors such as higher education or youth or schools, so, or industry. And we had some very interesting projects being presented in terms of the FE sector working with industry. So again, what I'd like to do is to invite you to reflect upon the opportunities in this area where Wales could share good practice here and benefit from good practice elsewhere. And again, we've got a ready-made partnership on the panel here today, in my opinion. The third or the fourth bullet point there refers to the fact that the outcomes of any of these projects must be disseminated, and therefore they must have relevance to other providers within the sector. The project should be short and focused and would not extend beyond 12 months. So you could aim for a 6, 9, or a 12-month project. And it is likely that these calls will be launched potentially in August 2022, but there could be a soft launch before that if we are ready. Diolch. And as far as we are concerned, now that we've introduced Taith very, very briefly, you can always go to the website. But I'd like to discuss with you, Walter, if you could go on, please, some of the topics, the nature of the international mobility opportunities, which learners should we target initially, and how can we extend it throughout the sector? Should we develop a strategic approach to this? Is there an opportunity to develop Pathway 1 bids this year? Can we do it as consortia? Or are we going to build the foundations and then apply for funding? Again, we'd like to know what your response to that would be. And the nature of some of the Pathway 2 funding projects, it would be interesting for us to learn that. And then again, as I mentioned, what sort of support do you need from both Taith and from the sector organising body? So I'll pass back to you, Chair.
Thanks both. Thanks. It was really interesting, and I think some really good discussion questions. I think I'd like to come back to, and I really like the idea of pathway too around the consortia approach, and that's got some real merit for us, and that's particularly what we just talked about in the main conference. I think so. We'll rather than questions now, so people can obviously post questions in the chat, and we'll take some questions and discussions at the end. Can I hand, I think, to Katie is next on my list, to give a kind of perspective from Ireland and the opportunities, a little bit about the sort of priorities there, but also about the potential networks and opportunities of partnership there.
Perfect, David. Thank you so much. I'm really delighted to share information today with our colleagues. It sounds like a really great opportunity, and I agree that there's ready-made networks here. So I guess the purpose of this presentation, I've just put a short presentation together to give you an overview of the work that we're doing in Aintis that might spark some ideas for collaboration. I'm going to focus on some of the areas that we're focused on in Ireland, and hopefully that will get some ideas going. And as always, we'd be really happy to support this project and welcome colleagues from Wales as well for this opportunity. So Aintis is the national adult learning organisation in Ireland. And our work is very much focused around a vision for educational equality. So while our work spans the whole of adult learning, we're very much focused on those learners that are most marginalised. And I know people are talking about target groups of learners, but after the fallout of COVID-19, we've really seen in Ireland that there's been a huge drop-off of certain cohorts of learners, members of the Irish travelling community, Roma, lone parents, learners with disabilities, those over 50 years of age. And moving forward in Aintis, that's very much where our focus is in terms of the work. So just to give you a bit of an overview, we're a membership organisation in Ireland. So we've over 500 organisations and individuals committed to lifelong learning. And I guess in that sense as well, when we're talking about mobilities, we have connections with members all around Ireland who are running specific projects. So when we in the past have taken mobility projects or people have come to Ireland, we very much link in with our membership in terms of what those groups might be looking to learn about. So I guess it's a really good opportunity to do that. We're very much about the collaboration with our members and ensuring that all adult learners in Ireland can succeed and they have really good learning environments and all of their needs are met. In terms of some of the areas in Ireland that we're focused on as an organisation, the first one is community education, and I'll talk a little bit about these throughout the presentation. Supporting learners to share their voice. So in Ireland, and Aintis is hugely passionate about learner voice, and I'll talk about some of those projects. But if that's of interest, there's definitely an opportunity to come and learn more about those projects that we're delivering in Ireland. And we are predominantly an advocacy organisation, and I'm going to talk about some of the key wins during COVID-19 around getting funding from the government for community education and really getting that recognised. And again, I think that's a really good learning opportunity of how that work happened and how that success happened as well. And we've developed networks at regional, national and European and international level. And so I guess that's such a key part of our work, and that's why projects like these fit so well into what we're doing. It's very much about sharing knowledge and addressing issues that are faced by different groups. So again, these are the three goals of the organisation: learner voice, a thriving community education sector, and lifelong learning for sustainability, which is a newer goal for us, but still there's examples of projects that we're running under that goal as well. And in terms of an organisation and where our expertise lies, like how we really achieve those goals within the organisation, I'm head of communications, so that's very much a key part of how we really deliver out on our work. We have a wonderful research unit as well, and over the last couple of years that's a new unit in the organisation and has really allowed us to develop evidence for our advocacy work, which is so important. We do capacity building programs, and that includes our Learners as Leaders program, and I'll share a little bit of information about that. And advocacy, and we're an advocacy organisation, and it's very much about linking with key stakeholders, with the government, policymakers, to make that real change in adult learning in Ireland. And I guess we really link that learner voice to try and make that change. So getting that experience of learners in order to shape and change policy in Ireland. Our membership includes a wide variety of organisations, but just to give you a little taster of that, it's community and voluntary organisations, statutory organisations, which are predominantly education and training boards in Ireland, who run the statutory provision of education, adult learners and tutors, and other NGOs as well. So a really diverse range of membership. And I guess from an adult learning perspective, our principles are really, really important to us in terms of how we deliver our work, the passion and commitment that we take in every single project that we run. It's very much about social justice, social inclusion, partnership. And I think partnership is such a key part of our organisation, and everything we do is about collaboration and partnership. We feel really, really strongly about that. It's valuing diversity, advancing equality, and feminism as well. So if you come to Ireland to learn more about that, it's all of our members really underpin these values in the work that they're doing as well. So just a quick snapshot in terms of the networks that we've developed. Taith runs a number of different European projects. And so I guess this has really given us that expertise of developing those networks and linking in with colleagues across Europe. So we've KA1, 2 and 3, and we're the national coordinator for the European Agenda for Adult Learning in Ireland as well. So we're in a project that runs from 2022 to 2023, Inclusive Recovery and Transformation. So there's lots of opportunities and lots of different activities that are happening within Ireland as well. But I guess we do have that experience of mobilities and different projects coming to Ireland. So I'm just going to really quickly run through some of the core activities that might give you some ideas of, different things that you might be interested in, or different ways that we could collaborate. Taith has a community education network. So I mentioned community education is a key part of the work that we do. And to support community education in Ireland, we run a community education network, which is over 100 independently managed community education groups. And that provides a space to network, learn and engage on key issues relating to community education. But it also provides us a really great opportunity to build capacity for those local groups to advocate for themselves, and also really to look at sustainability for community education in Ireland. And I guess, community education is a process of community and personal transformation, empowerment, challenge, social change, and collective responsiveness. And I guess looking at the fallout from COVID and what's needed to support learners, we feel really strongly that community education is in a really great place to be able to support some of the most marginalised groups in Ireland. And much of our advocacy work is focused on funding for community education. And I'll talk through a little bit for that. But many of our members are delivering community education at local level. And it's a really, I guess, watching that grow over the almost 15 years of the community education network has been really great. And while COVID-19 was a huge challenge, it resulted in one of the biggest key advocacy wins as an organisation in terms of gaining funding from the government for community education groups. And I'll talk through that. So that's just a picture of some of the amazing groups that are running community education at local level. So again, just I guess as a membership organisation, we can really provide that connection to the local groups, and they all kind of are looking or deliver provision to a specific target audience. Learner voice is a key part of our work and has been for many years, but it's very much about engaging with the learners. And I guess we really have thought long and hard about the process of learner voice in Ireland, how we deliver it. We're always trying to improve it. It is about transformative learner voice. It is not just about getting learners' experiences, and then that's it. Many of those learners come on a journey with Aintis through different projects, such as the Learners as Leaders. It's about building their capacity. There's 2 learners this evening in Dublin that will speak at a conference and really share their views about the future vision for Europe. So we're always looking at opportunities to give those learners a voice, and we include it in every single event that we run, but not in a tokenistic way, in a very authentic way, and really look at kind of, I guess, allowing those learners to share their experiences, to shape that policy and to really kind of ground us in terms of what we're doing as an organization. And from a communications perspective, we know how powerful it is to share those experiences, to encourage other people back to education, but it has a knock-on effect as well on those learners, building their confidence, allowing them to speak in huge arenas. And you often have those learners say that, you know, a year on from where they've at, they could never imagine that they were being able to share their story so authentically and be able to kind of build that professional development for them as well. So it's a really rewarding piece of work that we do. And as part of the Learner Voice, we run the National Further Education Training Learner Forum in Ireland. So it's one of the biggest mixed method research projects in Europe, Learner Voice projects, that essentially brings learners together to get their feedback on further education and training services. And then we feed that information back at local level, but also at national level, to make those changes. So it looks at what's working well, you know, maybe what's not working so well, what can be improved, and really looking at kind of solution-based feedback from those learners. And during COVID-19, we ran a survey of almost 2,000 learners, and it was hugely valuable in terms of getting some of those advocacy wins, because I think that's what we've learned in a huge way during COVID, that if we're, you know, advocating for certain groups, we need to have those statistics to back up what is actually happening at local level. So that's something that we've worked really hard on. And I guess it's very much about the learner's own experience, and how that can provide hugely important information. And it's not just statistics, we're talking about qualitative information, which sometimes can tell the full story in terms of what those challenges and what those barriers are. And we're working on adult learning research that looks specifically at those barriers and why certain cohorts aren't engaging. And that's something that the organization is working on with colleagues actually from the Learning at Work Institute moving forward. So just an example there of some of the learners, and I guess within our communications work and across our campaigns, we really use learner voice and utilize those stories to get different messages across. I won't read out all of those quotes, but if you visit our website, aintis.com, you can read all of the learner stories there as well. And there's loads of videos on our YouTube, and we're always sharing information on our social media. And we actually use our Instagram account specifically for learner voice as well, in terms of sharing those stories. And the Learners as Leaders program is something that came from really COVID-19. It's a peer mentoring program that looks at building capacity for learners. So we've been doing learner voice for a long time in Aintis, and as part of the European Agenda for Adult Learning, this project is looking to give back to learners as well, providing communications training, advocacy training, and we've run a number of different campaigns that are learner-led. So we had a group of learners with disabilities from the south of Ireland, and they created all the content for the campaign. Nothing about us without us. So how, if we're going to make changes in policy, or we're going to make decisions for learners with disabilities, that it needs to come from them, and we do not make decisions without consulting or having their opinion on that. Those learners are the most incredible group of learners, and we facilitated them to run that campaign across our social media platforms, but it was learner-led in terms of all of the content came from those learners. That's a direct, I guess, result of the Learners as Leaders program. And in this year, 2022, some of those Learners as Leaders programs will focus on specific target groups, cohorts of learners. So we'll have a campaign focused around older learners. Now we're also looking at migrant women later in the year as well. So a real opportunity to promote a very specific message, but also to really build capacity and give something back to those incredible learners that have taken part in different areas of the work. And I guess in terms of, like, I've talked a lot about this, but we really do have incredible members, incredible groups in Ireland. And this is just a little flavour of how some of those groups responded to COVID-19 to stay engaged with their learners by sending postcards, by engaging with lots of different innovative, creative ways while their learners were going through something that was, you know, really, really challenging. And I guess a key part of Aintis, it is about that networking and providing that space for people to come together and share ideas. And I think that's something that, you know, if people have ideas about what different mobilities you could do, there is just so much scope in terms of all of the members and all of the different work that has happened, and that we'll be able to match different activities. And just in terms of successful advocacy, and I've mentioned this through the presentation, but as a result of COVID-19, our CEO was tasked to run a mitigating educational disadvantage group with the Department of Education in Ireland, which gave us an opportunity to meet with the minister every single week during COVID-19 to give direct feedback about how learners were coping or all of those challenges on the ground. So that involved really linking through with the research team and getting that information from groups in terms of what was happening. And as a result of those meetings and really providing that information every single week, Minister Simon Harris, who is our minister, announced a dedicated mitigating educational disadvantage fund of €8 million, which was the first round. We've actually had another round since. And that fund was used to directly support community education groups to engage with disadvantaged learners during that time. It's just been a huge win, but it was a challenging fund, and Aintis has gone on to do a review of that fund as well to look at what improvements could be made. And we're now looking at a more regular fund that will be used to support those groups. So we've been advocating for funding for community education for forever. And I guess it was looking at that crisis of COVID-19, but using it as an opportunity to really push and advocate during that time. And our role now is really looking at how we can recover post COVID-19 and really engage with those learners and still use those opportunities because it is a small window. So again, if people were interested in that process, I think it'd be really interesting to come and learn about that as well. And I guess, you know, I know we might use post COVID-19. I don't know if anyone's using that language yet because we're not there. But I think I thought it would be useful to share some of those learnings from COVID-19, just from the Irish perspective in terms of what we've learned. I'm sure it's the same across the board, but it's very much about working as a collective. And that's why these networks are so important and really sharing that information. Evidence for advocacy, like I said, and that really quick response of being able to come up with that research, the evidence about what's happening on the ground to be able to advocate for adult learners. Building an understanding for the broader kind of purpose in terms of what we're talking about and really understanding educational disadvantage and building capacity, which is something that as an organization we're just really, really focused on, because I think it has huge potential then to really support groups at local level. As a national organization, I think it's really important that we do that, continuing to learn and grow and sharing knowledge and resources. So a really quick snapshot in terms of some of the work. I'm happy to take questions after all of the presenters, but just some information there if you're interested to find out more about the organisation and how we can support the work.
Great, thanks, Katie. And I think you've got so much to teach us about learner advocacy. I think it's something we just haven't done enough of here in Wales, and I think we need to really kind of move into that space. I think, and I'm really interested in mobility around that, definitely. I know we've done some of that already, but definitely interested in that as well. Thank you ever so much for that. Right then, going to move on to, yeah, we'll definitely take questions at the end, if that's okay. I think you're still here. So Zvonka, I think you're going to be next up on, I can't see you. Oh, there you are.
Yes, here I am.
I just couldn't see you on the screen then for a second, sorry.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes. Yes, okay. So good afternoon from a different part of Europe, I would say. Okay, just a second. So we are a Central European country. Some would say Eastern European country. Is true as well. In any case, it's one of the former Yugoslav republics, and we are not so very different from you. Actually, after hearing the plenary session, I think we are similar as a nation, as a country, but also similar as far as views and challenges in adult education are concerned. We have the same area. Can you imagine? You also have around 20,000 square kilometers. Your population is much larger. You have a dragon as a symbol of your country. We have the dragon as a symbol of our capital, Ljubljana. And I would like to invite you to have a look at this video. Don't get frustrated by the ad, which is at the beginning somehow, but it's a beautiful video. It was prepared for the Slovenian presidency in the second half of last year. So let's move on. I come from the Slovenian Institute for Adult Education, which was founded at the beginning of our country's independence. That means at the end of 1991, beginning of 1992. And we are not a member organization like AINTAS, but an umbrella institute for the development of adult education, somehow a link between policy and practice, meaning that we do some support, mainly research work for the ministry. We help them formulate policy documents and so on. On the other hand, we work closely with a network of adult providers, mainly adult educational centers, or also folk high schools, they're called, also secondary schools which provide adult education, private providers, NGOs, and so on. So we give them some recommendations, we guide them in their work and so on. Financed, of course, by the ministry. Since we were founded by the government of Slovenia, we're financed by the Ministry of Education on the one hand and the Ministry of Labor in a minor share, about 30%, 70% is the Ministry of Education. We use European structural funds for development work, and when they're gone, like right now, we have a huge gap, we have to let people go and so on, and we wait for the next phase. And then we have, of course, Erasmus Plus projects, and from now on, maybe also collaboration with you through this new program. Our institute has 4 units. One is research and development. The other one is guidance and validation of prior learning. Then quality and training of adult educators, and promotion and information. You could also say communication, like Katie's unit. So my personal expertise is the following. I'm head of this promotion and information unit. I'm also national coordinator of the Slovenian Lifelong Learning Week for 27 years now, and national coordinator of the implementation of the European Agenda for Adult Learning, and the Learning and Work Institute, as well as AINTAS, have been part of the network until last year, right? So we know each other through this process, but we have cooperated in the past, especially in the field of awareness raising, I would say, and work with learners. So one of the major challenges is this one. It's yours, it's ours, actually. There is an immense need for a culture of lifelong learning, where adult learning and education is one of the crucial links, I would say. So we try to follow all the documents, strategies at the global level that have been mentioned today already at the EU level, but also at the national level. we have an Adult Education Act dating 1996, and it was renewed and brought some novelties in 2018. We have an Adult Education Master Plan, three phases already. The last one is running, began actually right now. And the main idea in this master plan is to link sectors concerning adult education, but not sectors of education, as we have been talking today, but sectors like economy, culture, environmental issues, and so on, with the education sector. So in this master plan, we have priority areas, we have money dedicated to certain tasks, and money comes from different ministries, different sectors. In accordance with this master plan, we have each year the annual adult education program at the national level, but also at the municipality level in some municipalities. We have a strategy of lifelong learning dating in 2006. We would say it's a utopian document because it hasn't got an action plan yet. It's very similar to what has been said by your minister. So I really enjoyed his speech, and I was in Bratislava a few weeks ago. They're already working on an action plan for the strategy of lifelong learning, which was actually an obligation by the European Commission to have such a document in every country, but not many have really implemented it, because it involves really all levels of education and all sectors horizontally and vertically, I would say. So why is there this huge need for lifelong learning? We explored this topic in the European Agenda forums because we wanted to see what is the role of adult education with regard to 6 socio-economic trends. 2 are demographic, and I'm sure you have the same issues. One is the aging population and a need for intergenerational cooperation. The other is migrations and multicultural society, then digital and green transition, the future of work and skills, and inclusion and democratic citizenship. So through these 6 forums, and I have a link for you here, you can have a look, because we have everything recorded, everything, almost everything translated or with subtitles in English, but also manifestos of these forums. And we, of course, came to the conclusion that adult education can be, should be, and is already the driving force when tackling all the above mentioned challenges. But the issue is all the issues are intertwined and involve a horizontal and vertical approach if we want to be successful. So this is clear to many of us working in this field, but there are still far too few of us convinced and proactive ones. So this is shown by our data in comparison with Sweden, for example. It's the LFS labor force survey. You can see that in 2011, we already had quite a good participation rate of adults, 16%, but it only dropped in the following years and came to 8.4. So participation is a real issue. And I was listening very carefully when people talked about barriers, how to get to know them, how to overcome them, and so on. So the fields where we could offer some form of cooperation would be certainly awareness raising and motivation. We have organized the Lifelong Learning Week, like actually we used NIACE, it was NIACE in the past. NIACE's ideas on how to promote adult learning, and established a Lifelong Learning Week, named it Lifelong Learning Weeks, because as you can see, when we started in 1996, it was 70 providers and 500 events. Last year, it was 1,200 providers, but in the years before, it was close to 2,000 providers of adult education. Of course, educational, but also non-educational institutions, NGOs, groups like study circles, and so on. So we also developed a learning parade, which means that we have each during each lifelong learning week. On average 15 locations, cities where all the providers come together and present in various lively ways what they have to offer. But on the contrary, the lifelong learning week takes place in small rural places and so on. So here is the difference between the parade and the week. The parade is actually an element of the lifelong learning week. Here are some characteristics, but I will not go into details because we don't have enough time. In any case, partnership is the key word. We have a lifelong and life-wide, or all walks of life actually, coverage. A stable, committed and creative network of coordinators is very important, and here we really have good experiences that we can share, but we also work with learners, with their voices, although here is definitely a challenge for us. And whenever I have contact with Welsh or Irish experts, I'm listening very carefully, because we would like to learn a lot how to use learners in our advocacy work. Then the second field of work is guidance and outreach. We have a very stable, a very complex network of guidance centers working in adult educational centers. Before I said they're also called folk high schools. And since 2021, they are public service, meaning that there is money guaranteed for these people who work as guidance workers. And this network of guidance centers is actually a public network. So money is guaranteed. This is actually the support to learners to get into education. Outreach, of course, is also very important, to go outside of adult education centers to places where learners actually are. Then another successful activity is the platform Where to Get Knowledge. It's a collection of nearly all the providers and their educational programs of non-formal and formal learning opportunities. And it also includes, of course, learners' testimonies and so on. This platform is also the basis for guidance work and also for research in this field. So our findings would be that whatever we do, sound partnerships at national, local, international level, wherever, have to be based on a win-win relationship. And there always has to be a top-down and bottom-up approach or cooperation. There has to be flexibility within clear boundaries, a fair balance between quantity and quality. And as we know, yes, to learn, but also to socialize, to be with other people, but above all, to make a difference. And that's what the forums showed. When we learn, when we get together, when we are happy, we have to make a difference for society as a whole, or for the community. Another imperative to build on positive stories, to approach learners where they are. Nothing, again, like Katie, for learners without them, build alliances and so on. And what we would like to do is what we do within the lifelong learning weeks, which usually last 5 weeks in May and June. We would like to expand this throughout the year and really across all walks of life. And we want to do this with European structural funds. Here are some sources, if you are interested in anything, and then some pictures from the Lifelong Learning Week in times of COVID. And here's one where COVID was not yet in existence, or we didn't know about it, and it also includes Kay and Scott. So I was very happy to hear Scott speaking today. He's always an inspiration, and was to everybody who got in contact with him. So thank you very much.
So, and I remember seeing the pictures from that exchange. I was very, very jealous I didn't get to go. Next time post-COVID, I hope. So,
well, you're invited to come.
Definitely, I'll take that.
This May, June, or next. Yeah.
No, it's really, and I really do really do enjoy the kind of similarities between our two countries, and it's great that we've got that partnership, and hope there's an opportunity to build on that. I'm conscious of time, and I do want to have a bit of discussion. People will have questions, and I know, Christina, you've already mentioned in the chat about family learning partnerships. Just want to, Mark, is there anything you want to say at this stage about the kind of support we'll be offering, or are you sort of happy to leave that to the question and answer element of the discussion?
I'm happy to leave that to the question and answer part of the discussion. Let's see what comes out of the next sort of few minutes, and then we can have some more input after that.
Great, thanks, Mark. That's really helpful. So, does anyone have any questions, comments, anything like to ask us or our international partners at this stage, or any sort of questions people have? Okay, so does anyone have any particular questions about how the program will work, and about how, any sort of questions for Walter and Hugh in particular at this stage? I know there's lots of information which we'll absolutely send round, but I know sort of, Christina, you were asking, weren't you, about family learning partners? I'll definitely put you in touch with some people there, I think. So is there any questions for Hugh and Walter about the funding streams and the current funding applications that are open at the moment?
I've got one. Sorry. Yeah. I'm just thinking, like, can organizations go for 2 different pathways at the same time? Like, have one application for pathway 1, basing on one particular theme or topic, and then plan for a longer project for a pathway 2?
Yes, yes, that would be possible. What we are looking for out of pathway 1 is an institutional bid. So we wouldn't want an institution to put a bid in for every project. We'd want you to combine all of those projects and to submit one bid. So if you've got a lot of mobility planned, you submit one bid for the whole of those projects. Pathway 2 is totally different in that what we're looking there is for you to be a lead or potentially a member of a consortium, and that bid will be most probably the call for proposals will be open in maybe August. We would have thought between August and October, and therefore, yes, be prepared for that and submit another bid for that money.
No, that would be quite useful, because I feel there's quite a lot of schools now within Cardiff who are focusing on family learning, and it would be really an eye-opener to see what the other countries are doing with family learning. And if I can form like a few schools together, if we can form a small group and then work as an ongoing project on a blended approach with other countries to share best practice and travel between the 2 countries, or share resources, or build up the family thing, because I feel it's still on a very beginning level out here on Wales. And unless we explore the whole world, we won't be able to be in a better position. And to bring it more as a progression, I think it will be a really good long-term project.
Excellent. Yeah, great. Go for it.
Thank you.
That's true. Now, I think Kay has responded in the chat as well, just about helping connect you with other schools, obviously outside of Cardiff. You'll have good links there, but obviously other family learning providers as well. And I'm sure Kay, if anyone's going to know, it's going to be Kay around the kind of international links on family learning, I think. So we'll be in touch on that one, I think. Anybody else with any specific comments? Scott, yeah. I can't hear you, Scott. Can anyone else hear him?
No.
No.
You're not on mute, definitely. It's just the sound's not coming through. Okay, do you want to maybe put something in the chat, Scott? I'll see if I can find anybody else has anything to ask at this stage. Anybody else with anything while Scott probably puts his lengthy question in the chat? Yeah, Svonka?
Yes, I would like to ask how are you going to match Welsh institutions and international ones? Because will you set up a list of possible partners according to topics, like before family learning was mentioned, who could be possible partners, or a database would probably be very useful?
Yes, that's as we said, because this is the pilot year and we're just starting from scratch. Sometimes we don't have a partner matching facility or a database, so we are relying on institutions who already have some links, international links. We are relying heavily on the sector organizing body, Learning and Work Institute and Adult Learning Wales, so no pressure, but I know you already have links. So for the first year, we're going to rely heavily on those two while we develop some kind of database that will allow people to find a partner more easily in future funding calls.
Okay, maybe you are aware of the fact that in EPALE, are you still part of EPALE? EPALE is this platform. There is a partner, so you could have a look there as well if you are searching for partners. That's
I'll
a public source.
Yes.
Yes.
I'll have a look at that. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
And Svanka, just to add to that, so we've got a briefing session set up with the European Association for the Education of Adults on I think it's the 26th of April. We just need to confirm that. And they've agreed to put the session together to share information about Taith with all of their members. So the plan is for us as well to go out to our contacts and see who's interested perhaps in discussing some specific ideas with the European Association. And we've met already with the European Basic Skills Network. And again, for all of you on the call today, real interest there on working collaboratively with providers delivering community-based essential skills to work with the European Basic Skills Network on a programme for the next year that could enable them to send colleagues to Wales to deliver some workshops with staff on CPD, and to enable then a group of educators to go to participate in a workshop that they're holding in Hungary for next year. So we're just working on some of those details at the moment, and we'll share more of that when we've got it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kate. And so Scott, I can see you've asked the question there about interest in putting together a cross-sector bid on youth and adult learning. It's probably worthwhile, asking for support, and that's probably worthwhile at this point. So I suppose where we've split the role of the coordinating body for the adult sector between ourselves and Adult Learning Wales is, I think we're going to be doing a bit more of the strategic kind of stuff. So, hosting the webinars, that kind of thing. And I think, Mark, the intention is that Adult Learning Wales would then provide a bit more. We will obviously do a bit of each, there's not hard and fast, but I think Mark would be looking to use maybe your kind of networks on the ground to support the organisations with a bit more practical support. So maybe that kind of bid writing that Scott was reflecting there. Is that a fair summary, Mark?
David, that's absolutely spot on. Yeah, we will be offering support in terms of developing the applications, and strengthening them wherever possible, and providing that advice and support to the network as a whole in order to get some of these applications in a strong way. So please get in touch with myself or with Kay through the relevant email addresses, and we'll be able to respond in due course.
And could I just come in there very briefly? In terms of Pathway 2, we are at the initial stages of developing this call for proposal. So if you asked us at the moment, what sort of questions are we going to ask? We've got a draft application form. Sorry, and that's all. So what we intend doing is to launch Pathway 2. It's a soft launch. In other words, we'll give you a draft application form so that you can have an understanding of what we're aiming to do. Because we also know that the Pathway 2, you will need to find partners. So we want to give you as much information as possible in advance, with the health warning that it is a draft. So Mark, if you keep in touch with Walter during the next few weeks, then as soon as we're ready, we'll share that with you. And the idea is that we'll launch it then officially in officially in August, 26th of August, and there'll be about a 2-month opportunity then for you to submit these. Apologies for the voice. This is what COVID does to you.
Thanks, Ewan. I really appreciate you being here today. What I don't want to do is I'm hoping that both Vonka and Katie, by the fact that you're here, says that you're open to suggestions around exchange programs. I don't want to completely bombard you with thousands of learners from Wales, but I'm hoping that you both would be open to potential opportunities here for us to come and visit and take part in exchanges. And so I think if you're okay, we will certainly point people in your direction if that's okay. I'd be really interested in anyone who might, for something in Ireland around that kind of the learner voice and advocacy. I think the sort of Learners as Leaders program. I think Kay's already picked some of this up, and we're very interested in some of that. I think, and how we develop that learner voice in particular. So the first deadline, though, isn't it, is coming up quite rapidly. So it's the 12th of May, I think, wasn't it? Was the first deadline for funding. So there's a job of work things to get on quite quickly. So if people have that chance to reflect after this session, Kay, I think, has already put the inquiry's email address in the chat. So please use that as a first kind of port of call to get in touch with us. We will do our very best to put you in touch with the right international partners and obviously to support you with any kind of bid writing as well. So, if you've had a chance to maybe reflect a bit today and mull things over in a couple of days, maybe next week, drop us a line and we'll try and get those bids. And we are really keen to make sure we get bids in this time round, and we use this year as a bit of a pilot year to understand exactly how things could work and how we can take the programme forward. Okay, has anyone got anyone from the panel got any final kind of comments they want to make at this stage? There's Katie or Zvonka, if anything you want to say, any final comments you want to make at this point?
Maybe I would what might be useful, I know there's the timeline coming up, but on the 26th of October, we're planning a national learner voice event. We haven't had a face-to-face event in a while, and that would essentially look at a lot of the work that has been done. I'll link with Kay with information on it. But just to get people thinking, I guess I'm thinking about future activities, and if that was a big conference that would share lots of information together, it might be something that we could have colleagues from Wales come and learn more about.
That'd be a really good opportunity, I think, and an opportunity you could have. That could be the focal point of the visit as well. And I'm interested as well in Ireland, and I think, and Slovenia certainly around that kind of that rural areas. I know you've done quite a bit of research around how adult community learning centres in rural communities deliver, and that's obviously a real relevance for us as well. I'm very interested in that. Zvonka, is anything you want to add finally?
I think that you are on the verge of something phenomenal, and I wish you good luck with Taith and everything that the minister promised and already implemented and realized. Just go along with it, and may it serve you well.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you for your support. I won't ask you if you've got anything final to say. Maybe your voice might go, but Hugh or Walters, anything you want to add at the end? But please feel that you don't have to speak, Hugh, if your voice is going to go.
No, I think we have got potential there for collaboration with Slovenia and with Ireland. I would hope that the Irish link, if it was to be established, would be truly sectoral. That is the Welsh education sector as a whole, as opposed to just adult education, because I know that the further education are keen on developing links there, and that's the beauty of this, that we could develop intergovernmental links and agreements. Slovenia, I should have been there in 2019 and 2020, or 2020, 2021, because of COVID, we couldn't go there. I'd love to visit the country, and I certainly will in the near future.
Thank you, Hugh. Walter?
Yeah, final thing from me, just to say how excited we are about all the opportunities that are opening up for Wales, and specifically for the adult education sector. And I would like to say thank you to all of you organising this wonderful conference and all the international delegates. And yeah, let's go together on this Taith, on this journey to interconnect and improve standards for everyone.
Great, thanks. No, we're really pleased to be part of the programme, and it's great that we're able to collaborate between Learning and Work and Adult Learning Wales as well. So hopefully you have all the information you need in terms of the email addresses and the links you need to find. I mean, really is now over to you and over to us to try and encourage those applications to come forward between now and May, certainly for that first kind of tranche. So thank you ever so much for your time today.